The chamber was electric with tension, the kind that clung to the air and made every breath feel heavier than it should. Reporters scribbled, cameras blinked like restless eyes, and an audience sat on the edge of their seats. All eyes were on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett as she leaned into the microphone, her voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Senator John Kennedy is unfit to serve," she declared, her tone carrying both disdain and certainty. The words echoed through the room, landing like stones in still water, rippling outward with a force that couldn't be ignored. The statement was bold or perhaps even reckless, but it came from her conviction that Kennedy's old-school style of politics and his pointed humor masked a man who, in her view, didn't take the serious issues of the nation with enough gravity. She expected pushback, yes, but what she didn't expect was the storm about to unfold. Senator Kennedy sat quietly at first, his expression unreadable. He didn't rise to her insult, nor did he toss back one of his infamous one-liners that so often made headlines. Instead, he taped his pen against the desk slowly, almost rhythmically, as if waiting for the right moment to let the truth breathe. "Congresswoman Crockett," Kennedy finally said, his voice calm but carrying that southern steel that seemed to command any room he entered. "You say I'm unfit. I reckon that's your right. But before we all start casting stones, there's something I'd like this chamber and the American people to hear." The room hushed. Even the most jaded reporters looked up from their notepads. Kennedy motioned to an aide, who stepped forward and pressed play on a small recorder. The sound that filled the room wasn't political grandstanding, nor was it the voice of Kennedy himself. It was the trembling, weary voice of a woman, an elderly nurse from a rural Louisiana town. Her story unfolded with the raw honesty of someone who had no agenda, just gratitude. She spoke about a crumbling hospital on the verge of shutting its doors, how patients in her community were being turned away because the resources had dried up. She recalled how she reached out desperately to every official she could, how her pleas went unanswered until one day, Senator John Kennedy's office called back. Through tears, she explained how Kennedy had personally intervened, securing emergency funding and working with both sides of the aisle to save that hospital. She described walking down the hallways after it reopened, seeing children being treated, seniors getting their medications, and families no longer being forced to drive hours for care. "I don't care about politics," the nurse's voice broke, heavy with emotion. "All I know is that without Senator Kennedy, people in my town would be dead today." He didn't care who we voted for. He just cared that we were human beings who needed help. The recording ended, but its weight hung in the chamber like a stone pressing down on every heart. Even those who had come to cheer Crockett's words sat in silence, grappling with the undeniable humanity in the story. Jasmine Crockett's face shifted. The fire that had fueled her accusation flickered into something else: a conflict, perhaps even regret. She wasn't someone without compassion. She had built her career on fighting for justice and fairness. But in that moment, she realized she had underestimated the quiet, often unseen battles Kennedy had fought outside the spotlight. Kennedy leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers not with anger, but with the steady patience that came from years of enduring both praise and ridicule. "Congresswoman," he said softly, "you can call me a lot of things. Lord knows I've been called worse. But unfit, that dog won't hunt. You see, public service ain't about speeches or insults. It's about whether the folks back home know you'll be there when the chips are down. And I may not be perfect, but I'll never stop showing up for them." The chamber erupted, not in chaos, but in applause. It wasn't partisan, not entirely. It was the sound of people recognizing something bigger than politics, the heart of service. Crockett sat back, visibly shaken. For the first time in her career, she didn't have a ready rebuttal. She had intended to expose Kennedy as outdated and unfit, but instead, she had revealed something about herself that she, like many others, had overlooked: the quiet victories that rarely made headlines. Later, as the session ended and the cameras followed Kennedy out, Crockett remained behind, staring at the empty seat he had left. She wasn't humiliated. Not exactly, and what she felt was something deeper. It was a reckoning, because in truth, The story wasn't about who won the argument that day. It was about a reminder that leadership isn't measured by clever words or fiery speeches. It's measured in the lives touched, the communities saved, the quiet acts of service that rarely make the news but change everything for those who experience them. And as the nation watched, the moment became more than just political theater. It became a story of humility, redemption, and the kind of truth that no insult could ever erase. By the end, Crockett had given Kennedy the greatest stage to show his heart up, and in doing so, Kennedy had proven something much bigger than fitness for office. He had proven what it truly meant to serve. The lesson lingered long after the headlines faded. Words can shake a room, but deeds are real. Human deeds that can move a nation.